Not until we understand that we are lost can we actually stop and pick a path and find our way. The problem here is that most people are lost and wandering aimlessly when it comes to their finances. Today, let's explore the stages of wealth, because knowing where you are is the first step in understanding where you want to be. In the movie The Edge, Anthony Hopkins goes down in a plane crash, and with the remaining survivors, he says something to them. He says, "Why do people die in the woods?" Well, they die of shame. What he means by that is they die because of self-pity and despair. They start asking themselves questions. How did I get here? How could I let this happen? Why did this happen? What am I going to do? There's nothing I can do. And that self-pity and that despair turns to shame, and you feel like you're in a situation that you can never get out of. When it comes to our finances, many times we find ourselves in the same boat asking those same types of questions. Found myself actually lost in the woods one time. I was camping in the Granite State, New Hampshire, and it was in a state park that I was very familiar with. However, I just decided kind of late in the day just to go on a little walk, a little hike by myself, just to, clear my thoughts and enjoy my surroundings. Well, after about 45 minutes or so, I kind of stopped to look around, and I realized that I didn't really know where I was. I found some higher ground so I could kind of see above the tree line and still could see absolutely nothing. I had to admit that I was lost. This is the first time that had ever happened. I mean, I'd been in this state park dozens of times. So what did I do? Realizing I was lost, and it was late in the day, and probably in a couple hours it was going to start to get dark out. I'd been moving for about 45 minutes in one direction with some twists and turns. So I went down to the spot that I thought I was when I realized I was lost, and I said, I'm going to have to stop here, pick a direction, and just go in that direction. Because if I continue to go in the direction I've been going, obviously I don't know where I am, and I could be even deeper in the woods and even more lost. So I said, I'm going to go hard right or hard left. I kind of felt, I've always had a decent sense of direction, and I kind of felt that left felt better. Even though I thought right might take me back into the park, but I said left just feels like I'm going to get to something sooner. So I made a hard left, and I continued walking, and still 30 to 40 minutes later, I wasn't anywhere. I continued walking for a few more minutes, and I came to a little embankment, and when I came up on top of that embankment, my God, there was a highway there. And I was just super crazy relieved. I said, I felt like kissing the asphalt, right? So once again, I had come to a fork in the road, though. I'm going to have to make a right or I'm going to have to make a left, and I felt like left would take me back to the park. So I made a left and started walking along the highway, and sure enough, I see the sign after about 20 minutes. There's the state park entrance. So I make it back to my camp, and of course I was extremely relieved. And I started thinking to myself, it wasn't until I stopped and kind of, cleared my head and thought, I'm going to have to make a decision, but it's going to have to be a different decision. I can't sit here and have a pity party and get myself into a state of panic or despair, because then I'm going to not know what to do. And many people do get lost in the woods. This is a real thing, thousands of people a year. So I picked a direction, and I just tried something new. What I was doing wasn't working, so let me try something completely new. In this situation, that worked out perfectly. So what about our finances? How do we look at where we are and truly understand where we are to know where we are going? And sometimes, if we don't know where we are, we can actually get caught in a negative loop where we are looping back and we are going somewhere where we don't want to be, and we are finding ourselves lost once again. So all of this thinking and being lost made me realize that, like anything else, there are stages to wealth. There is a path. And until I realize where I am, and I'm honest with myself about where I really am, how am I going to reach for the next rung on that ladder? And might I be stuck in a negative loop where I keep sending myself back to a lower rung on the ladder because I'm not really paying attention to where I am? So let's talk briefly about the stages of wealth so we can kind of try and get a hold on maybe where we are at and see if we are lost in our finances. When I was a kid, I believed that there were 3 stages of wealth, right? Or 3 places in which we would concern ourselves with money. I thought that there were poor, I thought there was middle class, and the rich. Okay, these are pretty much the 3 areas that I thought. And I believe that, my family fell into middle class. I said, okay, my mother has a car, my dad has a car, they both have jobs, they work. I knew we weren't poor, but I definitely knew that we weren't rich because I could see how people who were rich lived. But part of my childhood I would spend going back and forth to Europe. My mother was born in Sicily and my father was born in Portugal, so we would go there for summers sometimes to spend with our grandparents or even take a vacation. And I got to see how some other children lived, even my age. And we'd go out in the field and we'd go to play soccer, and they were stitching a soccer ball together with old t-shirts and ropes. Their parents maybe didn't have jobs or were living off of some type of social assistance, and these people had no money, like very, very little or nothing. And sometimes we'd go out to different events and we'd see kids in the street, panhandling for money. And these were kids my age, so I just thought that was, extremely strange. But I realized that they fell into another category. The category is below poor, and it's called poverty. And, there's many ways you can end up in poverty. Of course, you can, spend yourself down to zero, but you could be born into poverty. You could suffer from a mental illness and end up in poverty. There's lots of different ways, but a lot of the poverty I saw growing up was extreme, and it was, in Europe, and we have it here in the States too. So there is a level below poor. Now, what's the difference between poverty and poor? I met a woman one time, and with a lot of people, we'll get into talking about their finances. And, she was complaining a bit and said, I really have to find a way to do more and to get ahead. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about what you do. And she said, well, I'm a single mom. I have an apartment. I have a daughter, and I work at McDonald's. I make, about $300 a week, so $1,200 a month. She goes, but my rent is $800 a month. So literally left her $400 a month to feed herself, feed her daughter, get herself to work, which she took the bus. She had a bus pass. She definitely could not afford a car or to keep a car on the road. And she couldn't afford daycare, so she was, giving her neighbor a few bucks to watch the daughter after school. She was really poor. But on the other hand, she didn't have any debt. She didn't have a credit card. She wasn't going into debt. She wasn't spending money she didn't have. But she literally was poor. She made what she made, and it took every penny for her to live without much chance to get ahead. But you would think the next thing I thought was middle class, but it's not. In between poor and middle class, there's a category I like to call broke. And what broke is, it's actually people who think they're middle class and they're making money. They have a job. Maybe they live in a decent apartment and have a car, but they never have any money. Why don't they have any money? Because they are literally spending themselves down to zero all the time because they're doing something else. They are pretending to be well off. And that is the category in between middle class and rich. If you're middle class, you have certain things, you have a job, you're working, maybe you're even getting ahead. You are getting ahead unless you are middle class and you're trying to live like you're well off. If you're middle class trying to live like you're well off, then you are actually sending yourself down to broke. And this is the cycle. That's a terrible arrow. And this is the cycle that people find themselves in. They could be in middle class, they could be saving, they could be budgeting, they could be doing really well and actually working themselves into a position where they're on their way to rich. They could be going from middle class to rich. They'll get there if you do the right things. Most rich people will tell you that some of them even started off poor. Many people started off poor and they worked themselves into a middle class position by doing the right things with their money and then bounced themselves eventually up to rich. But the loop that people are getting caught up in is this being middle class but living like you're well off or even rich. They're suffering from a syndrome where they have to spend money in order to feel good, and they're spending everything they make, and in many cases they're going into debt. So they're spending even more money than they make. So now we understand that there are several different levels all the way up from rich. We also understand that there is a cycle, there is a loop. A loop is a loop is a loop. That's what Prince said. And that loop can be a negative one in which you're operating out of here, but you're always ending up back in the same place because of the great pretender syndrome. So what about rich? And are there any levels above rich? Are there stages of wealth that are above rich? First, let's just talk about what rich is for a second. To me, rich is you have enough money, you make enough to live, and you're doing the right things with the money. So you probably make more than your average bear, but you're also doing the correct things with it. You are socking it away, you're saving it, you have your budget categories, you definitely have a POM account, your peace of mind account, and you're saving money for long term. So you know things are going to come up in life, and you know that your bills could even be more than most, but you aren't looking for opportunities to always spend money. You aren't spending down to zero, and you aren't spending everything you make, which is one of the reasons why you are rich. Above rich, though, there is wealthy. And then there is one more category above that we're going to mention. I'd-gad. So what is wealthy? Right? Let's just put a Y there. What is wealthy? Wealthy is you're no longer concerned with the money coming in. By then, you have passive income that you still work for, by the way, but you have passive income. Maybe you own a business. Maybe that money comes in while you sleep. You also have money that's invested. Maybe that's earning you money while you sleep. You've done the right things up the financial ladder, and you've put the money in places where it is probably working for you, which is one of the reasons that you have become wealthy, and you've made the right decisions, and of course you've put the money into the right buckets. You're still operating from a budget, but you don't have to worry about the budget anymore so much because everything's kind of automated and on autopilot by the time you get truly wealthy. But there is one other category that I want to talk about, and that's this category, IDGAD, or I'd-gad. And it's just a way that I look at things. I have some people that I hang out with, and one in particular will go out for lunch. And, one time I'll pay, one time he will pay, and we've done this, all over the world. When I, get the, menu, I'm looking at the menu. I'm not only to see what I want, but I'm always looking at the pricing on it, right? But he's not like that. I mean, he'll sit down and order a meal. He'll order for everyone. He'll pay for everyone. And I always thought, like, what is he thinking? He ordered all this wine, or he ordered these expensive appetizers, or all this food, and he didn't even look or ask, what the specials cost or what they're running. And that's because what he's thinking is, I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn thinking is when you have so much money that you're really not concerned. He makes enough money that even if it's an expensive meal, even if it's a really expensive meal, he's certainly not concerned. But he's like that with most things because he makes I don't give a damn money. And that is a level that's well above even wealthy because he's really not concerned anymore. He has enough passive income coming in. His investments are secure. His assets are protected. And he's done so well that things are mostly on autopilot. And yes, I don't give a damn. So when you get to that level of wealth, it is a whole different level. And many of you I know are trying to get there, but you're not going to get there if you get stuck in this vicious cycle, in this vicious loop of thinking that you're here, but you're really here, or maybe even really here or here, and you're just going to keep yourself there. You can be someone who makes enough money and really struggling to get to a certain place, but if you don't realize what rung you're really at, it's hard to reach for the next rung because you keep making the mistakes through your bad habits that will keep tossing you further down the ladder. Ultimately, what we're all after is financial freedom, but being free in many ways just offers you the ability to help free others. So the first thing I want you to do is free yourself from the trap and a vicious loop that you may be stuck in without realizing it, by looking at these stages of wealth and giving yourself an honest review on where you're at. Because if you're honest, that's the first step in being able to reach for the next rung. My name is Daniel F. Margasa. You are watching The Almost Criminal Millionaire. And if you enjoy the topic of money, saving, and getting ahead with your finances, then please like and subscribe for more.